Alright guys, so if you've done some porting on the barrel, these need to be obviously smooth, and you can't have any rigid edges on these. I'm going to sandpaper these. I've just gone over there with the stone on the grinding tool. But what we want is a smooth transition. We don't want any nonsense here. The piston does rock. It doesn't only rock transitionally or laterally, but it does it actually as well. So you've got to make sure these are smoothened edges. This is a Wiseco piston, so we're doing 0.6 tolerance between the piston and the bore, because these are forged pistons. There's a lot more meat in these pistons. The more meat you have, the more expansion you will have. So the tolerance needs to be greater. Cast piston, less meat, less expansion. The more metal you have, the more expansion you will have. Anyways, you can see the residual of me rubbing this liner or bore down with two-stroke oil. It's important when you're doing a fitment, a test of a fitment of a piston. You want to have the original conditions in the barrel present if you can. So I've oiled the rings and the entirety of this piston, very thin sliver of oil. And what we're doing here is I've already done a ring end gap check, so I know that this piston is concentric. Something I want to talk about, if you guys have got higher and higher levels of bore, you can see the bottom of the piston sleeve, or the barrel sleeve is chamfered, and this aids in putting the piston in with the rings. If that chamfer doesn't exist, in other words, if you've bored outwards and you're getting past 67.25 mils, the chamfer becomes very little and it gets more and more difficult to put the piston in. Eventually, if you get to 68 mils, the chamfer is pretty much gone, and you need to put a chamfer in there with a grinding tool. Just radius that edge there and that edge there at this, I don't even know what that is. I'm going to say 25-degree angle. Whatever it is, chamfer that edge and you'll get your piston in with its rings. So we've got the piston rings lined up with the pins. You can see my two-stroke oil on the top there. We've lined up the intake ports with the intake side, and we're going to place this piston in here and see if we can get it in. Now the reason I'm doing this is to validate the porting, the chamfering on the ports. If your chamfer on the port, so let's say your exhaust port sits here and the chamfer on the port is staggered, then when you do this exercise, those ports, the rings will actually catch on the edges of those ports, and that can be felt with some experience and knowledge. When you do this exercise, you will actually feel, as you push this piston up and down, you will feel where it's snagging in a port, where there is less of a smooth transition in a port. And you want the best transitions. Even though you visually, according to your templates and your drawings and your markings, when you do your porting, you might have snags. So I'm going to move this piston up and down. I can't hold my camera, my phone in a stand or anything at the moment, but I'm going to do this exercise. If I have any anomalies, we'll talk about that, but I don't really need to. If you have an anomaly, and you look at where that anomaly exists in the barrel, where do you feel a little bit of a snag? Does it line up with the transfers? Does it line up with the exhaust port or whatever? Go and look at those. Go and measure them. Be critical.